Nostalgia. It's a powerful force. It can comfort us with warm, familiar feelings. It can bring out the best of any situation. And it can also blind us to flaws that would have otherwise been very apparent. For me, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles embodies everything that is nostalgia. Just like I'm sure it does for many who grew up with it. And it probably will for those growing up with it now. But nostalgia can only carry a property so far, and I am not blind. Fortunately, the TMNT games that I'm most nostalgic for still hold up, and in fact are so good that they kept my love of the Turtles alive even through the darker times. But like many gamers, I've been waiting for that next great game in the series. One that doesn't just surpass the classics on its own merit, but does so in a way that doesn't rely on nostalgia at all. One that can stand completely on its own. And my hope is that TMNT Mutants in Manhattan is that game.
Sorry, Earthlings, but all your base are belong to us.
Of all the TMNT games that have hit the shelves since the classic and arguably best in the series, Turtles in Time, no game has stuck out to me as being capable of dethroning it until now. Why? Well, it's gotta be the source material. And yeah, go ahead, roll your eyes. I'm aware that it's all Teenage Mutant Ninjas, giant rats, walking cheese graters, Jason Voorhees ripoffs, and of course my personal dream come true, an endless supply of pizza. But no, what I'm referring to here is the continuity. There have been so many iterations of the Turtles. Some good, some bad, some produced by Michael Bay. And while Turtles in Time was born from the 80s version of the team, during the Turtles' heyday and all, and it's the version that got me into Turtle Mania as a kid, believe it or not, nostalgia aside, that's not my favorite version of the team. Personally, as an adult, I find that version a little too goofy now. I always kind of remembered them as awesome action heroes kicking butt to that epic battle tune. So, it only makes sense that as an adult, I would go on to graduate to a more mature version of the team, the IDW Turtles. If you're a TMNT fan at all, I highly recommend this series. It captures everything that made the previous incarnations great. The old, the new, the cartoon, the comics, and it combines them all together, all while still doing its own thing. It's fantastic. So, getting back on topic, when a game based on that series got announced, being written by the comic team itself, you better believe I got excited. This would be the great Turtles in Time successor, I thought. The gameplay looks fun, the graphics look great, and a story based on the comics? How could Mutants in Manhattan go wrong?
What's wrong with Raph?
He's ticked because we were duped again.
Let me be real here for a moment. This game is not bad. Especially not as bad as some other sources would have you believe. In fact, I'd argue that this game is pretty fun in short bursts. It actually feels like the natural progression of the beat-em-up genre in 3D. But unlike its 2D Turtle counterparts, perfect, this is not. This pizza pie needed a little more time to bake, but sadly what we got was a floppy, undercooked title that fails to live up to expectations and comes up short in nearly every department. Even ones it had no right to fall short on. If there's one way to sum up everything about Mutants in Manhattan, it's one step forward, two steps back. Even elements like the story managed to make a few pointless mistakes that just leave me shaking my head. I figured if nothing else at all, this game could at least trump Turtles in Time in the story department. I mean, seriously, what was the plan in that game? I'm gonna steal the Statue of Liberty, mwahaha, for some reason, because we're evil douchebags. I mean, really, I went on this whole rant about how much I love the IDW TMNT storyline, but Mutants in Manhattan does nothing to prove my point. And that's not due to any fault of the story itself, but more like how it's presented.
There's nothing normal about this, Leo.
Yeah, we're picking up reports from all over the city. It's crazy up there.
Crazier than normal, you mean?
I don't know why, but someone, somewhere decided that the multiplayer, arguably the most important aspect of any TMNT game, will skip some of the storyline cutscenes. Not all of them, mind you, just some. So for my first time playing through this game with a friend, we were both scratching our heads at how the story was playing out. And remember, this is the continuity that I adore. The one where the Turtles team up with the Ghostbusters and Batman. So I was kinda hoping to use this game as a gateway game for the comics. But nope, you have to play the solo player mode to see all the story bits. Particularly the ones with the important information. I can't even begin to imagine the reasoning behind this decision either. But thankfully, the story itself is at least enjoyable. Nothing too complex, anyone can follow it, and as a longtime Turtle fan, I found it pretty enjoyable. The Turtles themselves really helped to pull it all together.
Okay, guys, Krang's on the top level. We need to move quickly, quietly, and carefully.
Sheesh, Leo, you're starting to sound like Master Splinter now.
No way, Raph. Master Splinter would totally say, "My sons, always remember, we must endeavor to meet the enemy with speed, stealth, and..."
Like pretty much everything about Mutants in Manhattan, the audio too is a mixed bag. But this is a bag that has a few holes in it that rips as soon as you get to your car, dropping everything on the ground, causing your eggs to scramble themselves. What I mean is that the audio is probably the biggest area of complaint. Sure, like any game in this genre, the problem of the Turtles saying the same one-liners in a fight does get old rather quickly, which isn't helped by the fact that it's a reoccurring problem from as far back as the first PS2 TMNT game, but whatever, it comes with the territory. And it's made up for by the banter exclusive to the boss fights and the cutscene. As a Turtles fan, I really enjoyed how well it captures the team's dynamic and found it genuinely entertaining. But what I didn't find entertaining was the music, i.e. the hole that made my eggs go splat.
Now what, dudes?
And I'll confess that I am no music buff. I'm more of a graphics nerd myself, actually. And I really wouldn't bother to pick on the music if it was just forgettable. An accumulation of action tunes that really help set the mood, you know, nothing special but nothing offensive. But it's not. And while most of the music isn't a problem, there is one reoccurring tune that is just awful. It has an overly pulsing drum beat that just gets grating so fast. Enough so that it began distracting me even during the most chaotic fights. Unacceptable. But to be fair, disappointing music has been a real issue for the Turtles ever since Konami lost the license. None of the games since have had very memorable music, except for Out of the Shadows, which at least had enough sense to get the Turtle Power track from the first movie as a way to try and blind us with nostalgia before we actually get past the title screen. Turtle Power. Yeah, I see what you did there, very clever. But as for Mutants in Manhattan, the distracting thumping really ends up being a real sore spot for the game. But it's not all bad.
You simply do not know when to give up, do you? Pathetic mutants.
Mutants in Manhattan looks gorgeous with its comic book style graphics that really brings the pages to life. The bosses really steal the show here. They simply look cool, and the levels help to add to that spectacle, especially when you're grinding down pipes, gliding over buildings, or surfing the sewers. But unfortunately, beyond looking nice, there isn't that much to them. The levels themselves are pretty small, don't have that much to see in them, and despite that, almost all repeat. Like, here's a sewer, and here it is flooded. Here's the rooftops, and here they are at night during a storm. And here's Manhattan, and here it is again, after Trump becomes president.
Oh no. The city is in way worse shape than I thought. Do something, guys.
Though, to the game's credit, each stage is more than just cosmetic. Each adds its own gameplay gimmicks, like how you can surf down the flooded sewers, or flat out fly during the stormy winds. So, that's something at least. But I just can't help but wonder why a full-price title can be so small.
I told you, perfection. I'm an artiste, the Michelangelo of pizza. Wait a minute.
So, earlier I made a pretty bold statement by saying that TMNT Mutants in Manhattan feels like the next evolution. Or should I say, mutation? No? Alright. So, it's the next evolution for the beat-em-up genre, in the 3D realm at least. But when I say that, I don't mean in a way that has the genre just jumping from Turtles in Time to Mutants in Manhattan in one giant turtle gliding leap. I mean that it's the next step, as in an improvement over most isometric styled beat-em-ups that have come before, like Ultimate Alliance, Teen Titans, and of course previous TMNT games. However, this update comes at a price, and a pretty steep one at that for a TMNT game. The price? The local co-op. And for what it's worth, I get it. Constricting 4 players to a single screen would make this style of gameplay simply impossible, and would completely strip it of what makes it unique. But, you know what? That actually sums up this game to a T. Basically, every awesome feature is stuck with a huge but tacked on the end. Playing through this game with a friend, that really was our main sentiment from start to finish. Oh man, this is an awesome idea, but it could have been better if blank. The blank being if they had pushed the idea to its logical conclusion. For example, the main gameplay style in each level has a minor free roaming aspect to it. It's not as vast or as varied as say the Arkham games or any Spider-Man game, but being able to run around, climb buildings, and find secrets is still really fun, and probably wouldn't be doable if constrained to an isometric view that most 3D beat-em-ups use. But TMNT is also known for its local co-op, and it just doesn't feel right without it. And realistically, at minimum, 2-player split screen should have at least been doable. Again, Out of the Shadows did it. Plus, as much as I like the freedom to run around, glide through buildings and all that, there really isn't that much to do with that freedom, since most enemy encounters with large enough quantities for fun brawls tend to be limited to mission objectives.
No offense, Donnie, but you totally suck at pep talks, dude.
The mission objectives are also another step in the right direction. Unlike traditional brawlers where you just have to travel down a linear path knocking down hordes of baddies on your way to the boss, Mutants in Manhattan changes things up a bit. Each level has a progress bar at the top indicating how close you are to the boss fight. What makes this interesting is that in order to fill up that bar, you have to complete objectives. And while each stage has a few set objectives that you'll do each time, there are also random objectives that change with multiple playthroughs, helping to keep things a little fresh. But the random objectives only come in a few flavors, with the majority revolving around disarming bombs or transporting stolen loot. Basically, things that make you completely vulnerable and really tend to be more frustrating than fun. Plus, it doesn't help that later in the game, even the basic enemies like rock soldiers just take way too much punishment. Not to mention, the objectives only come one at a time instead of having multiple around, so players can take advantage of the free roaming. Of course, you probably won't even realize that these objectives are changing unless you're replaying the stages. And really, why would you? The answer to that comes in the form of secret bosses. Without a doubt, the highlight of Mutants in Manhattan are the boss fights. They're large, they're frantic, and they're fun. And it just completely amps up when you're in the middle of a fight with a big bad and another one decides to crash the party. But this feature isn't taken as far as it should be. The random extra bosses are totally tubular, but there's no exact way to trigger them. I've read that score, speed, and difficulty settings can help your odds, but they're still pretty random. On top of that, they missed the chance for more diversity. Like, for example, the first stage boss is Bebop, and who's the secret boss that might show up and help him? Well, Rocksteady, of course, and that's fine. But as you go on, you'll notice that the secret bosses are just bosses from other stages. And while that does genuinely add to the battle, it's a missed opportunity. Especially when they taunt us about it. Like during Karai's stage, throughout the entire battle, Mikey hints that Shredder might show up. And guess what? He's the hidden boss, which is cool, but then during Slash's stage, April makes this quip.
Guys, just a heads up, if you hear anyone down there with a Cajun accent, run.
If you don't know, it's a reference to Leatherhead. But Leatherhead's not in this game. And yeah, I know it's just a reference for the fans, a little something extra for us, but the extra boss concept would have just kicked it up another notch if they had thrown in more unique bosses and turtle references. Like, how cool would it have been to see the fly form of Baxter Stockman team up with this guy? And yeah, for the record, I know that the fly form doesn't exist in this continuity, but if these guys can make it in, why not Baxter too?
Who is this creature? And why doesn't he just use his wings?
Another thing that needs bringing up is the combat itself. Now, I'm no stranger to the big league reviewers' opinions on the combat. They think this is just another mindless button masher, and they'd be half right. But to say that makes this game bad? I don't know about that. I could easily make the same argument for plenty of other big name titles throughout the years. And while hacking and slashing is a key element, the fast-paced dodging, countering, and properly timed skills seem to have been completely ignored. Why? And those are important features, like how each turtle can be equipped with 4 different skills from a nice list of options. Though I'd argue that since each turtle can be equipped with the same 4 skills, it kinda takes away from their uniqueness, though I don't know why you do that, but still. And the final feature of note worth talking about is the dying of all things. I absolutely love how TMNT handles its dying. It's radical? I think you know that there's a problem when I'm trying to sell you on the dying. It's like, yeah, you'll love the dying because you'll do it so often, seeing how you completely suck. Really, what other game tries to sell you on that point? Oh, well, fair enough, I guess. But regardless, dying in TMNT is a real concern. Though I guess not as much as in Dark Souls, but you know, still. It's very easy to get KO'd because enemies do way too much damage. One good shot can easily lay you out, even from full health. But how the recovery is handled is absolutely brilliant, and it really helps keep the game's flow going. When your health hits 0, represented by the most horrifying sight in existence, running out of pizza, the game rips a page out of the Gears of War playbook. When your turtle is down for the count, there's a brief time in which your teammate can revive you. But if they don't, it's not the end. Instead, you drop down into the lair to eat your way back into the game. You only lose when all 4 turtles are down there at the same time, and this can lead to some pretty on-edge moments. The moment when you're the last turtle standing and you get taken out, but as you're falling into the lair, one of your teammates revives at the last second and saves the day. Or just the reverse. You go down and land in the lair just a second before your fellow green machine would have revived and you all lose. It's a great mechanic to be sure. But nothing. It's a great idea and it works with fast-paced co-op games, and I hope to see it implemented in more games to come. Hear that, game industry? Here's a great idea. Use it. In fact, steal it.
Never mind, dude. Wrong number.
In fact, there are just so many great ideas to steal here. But personally, I'd have rather have seen them done right here, done to their fullest. But unfortunately, what we got just doesn't quite hit the mark, making it kind of hard to recommend as is. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutants in Manhattan is a pretty enjoyable game overall though. It's that simple kind of fun. Fast-paced hacking and slashing, big bosses, and 4-player co-op all covered in that delicious TMNT topping. But all the tiny shortcomings really do start to add up, and I can easily see extended play sessions becoming dull. which really makes me wonder if this genre can really amount to something great in this day and age, the way it did during a simpler era. But that's still to be seen, though I do hope that it's TMNT that will be the ones to prove me wrong on this.
I fear this may be too big for our family to handle.
But you said it yourself, Father. We're honor-bound to do something about it. Whatever it is.
Yeah, the cops got their hands full. It's up to us. We can't stop now.
But for now, with this game, it suffers the problem of feeling really small, as if it was a budget title, so I'd say that's probably the best way to recommend it. At $50, I really can't recommend this one, even as a huge Turtles fan. But when it drops in price to a point that you and a few of your online buddies can each grab a copy on the cheap, then I'd say go for it. Despite the stupid flaw with the story, the co-op is really where it's at, and Mutants in Manhattan makes for a fun little diversion between those big AAA titles. Other fun diversions would include Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project, because it's another fun hack and slash TMT game with Manhattan in the title, and goodness knows I've recommended Turtles in Time on this show enough as it is. X-Men Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2, a pair of great 4-player co-op superhero brawlers with a few RPG elements thrown in. And for you online co-op players, I'd recommend the Dungeon Defenders series, 4-player hack and slash action set in a tower defense game. The two go together like pepperoni and cheese.
Whoever heard of heroes backing out right before the final boss anyway? Right?
Right!